Oh, shalom, RasTafari. Still meditating on this male risk factor thing and the brazenness of the Deus ex machina, the god out of the Babylonian god, the machine god. Because the machine god clearly is pointing out that the male is a risk factor and the female is just a matter of literature, a kind of a feminist talking point, right? That's what we've been actually witnessing, right? If we would open up our eyes and see the fullness of the biblical and the prophetic story. It's so pathetic that people really don't get it yet, right? Even though, you know, signs and more signs, right? But what is this whole, how can we say, this gender war? It's a gender war. They want to make us think it's a, you know, male versus female war. That's the way the enemy, right? The enemy wants to make us divide and conquer. Already we were divided from the very beginning because of the conspiracy in the garden, right? The conspiracy in the Gannat to Eden. And we know that the main target of the conspiracy was the male, right? That was Satan's enmity was to Adam, right? The God, right? Or the one who was made and created in the image and after the likeness of the Almighty, right? After the likeness of the Almighty. But the woman was used in a sense, in the same way, but in a worse way than the serpent was used. The serpent was used too. The serpent was Satan's tool. So some women, sisters, daughters, and mothers and wives might think that some of us are just beating up, and some might be a little angry and upset. And even though they are speaking that divine, that divine word, you understand? Of course, you know, different prophets had different personalities, right? But don't slay, you know, the messenger, right? Receive the message, right? Because this message is about time. This is about the time that we're in, where Babylon is so brazen, right? That they basically tell us in our face, right? They tell us in our face, you know, what's really going on, right? They tell us in our face what's really going on. Looking at some of these pics here. Okay, we're not going to use any of these. Let's come over here because we want to know the truth, right? And we look upon the black male and the black female, right? In the sense of the prophetic and the manifest word. We could also say, and the pathetic conditions that we face, right? And we say, well, why? We have to go to the beginning. What was this all about? Right? Remember, man was made in the image and after the likeness, right, of Ha-Elohim, of Elohim, of the power, right? And then woman was made of and from man. And now man comes through woman. In other words, in the birth process. See, a lot of fools out there, they're confusing the end product with the beginning. They really don't know the beginning. They just speculate on the beginning. The Hebrew, right? And we're saying the Hebrew, speaking of the scriptures, the Torah, and the first book, Genesis, it reveals the whole genealogy, right, of the true Isis, right, really known as Hawa. Moses brought that out. He was learned in all the wisdom of the Egypts, right? And this does not mean that we dismiss, you know, the truth that the Kemetic, the Mitzrayim, and ancient Egypt, because we were there, right? We also made our mark. Joseph made his mark, Yusuf, right? And Moses and the patriarchs and Abraham all made their mark. You understand? But we have to recognize the bigger picture. This picture is against humanity. It's against life itself, right? To divide, right? To divide and conquer. This is where we get this, you know, black feminism, right? And versus this, the black male movement. And what they don't recognize is that they both are being played. But the object of the enemy, right, is the male. This is one reason why in the analytics that we pointed out previously. Let's grab this. We may want to use this over here, right? Want to touch a little bit more. Right there. Yeah, touch a little bit more on this using one of this guy's pictures. It's kind of interesting right here. Right, this kind of picture right here, the eating of the fruit symbolically, of the apple. But here's what the God of the machine says, right? You see that right there? Right? Male risk factor versus feminist literature. We kind of took a snapshot from the other vid of the so-called analytics. So you can see this for yourself. The male is a risk factor. Why? They would tell us and make us believe that the female, right, is at risk. If you look at all the literature, propaganda, movies, and media that we have been force-fed, right, by Follywood for the past, how long has that been? But especially over the past 40 years, right, because we're in a prophetic time. But most don't have this truth in their heart and their mind. They don't recognize this. They think we're just making a big point about nothing. No, this is just a proof and the evidence when you hear about the feminization of the masculine or of the male, right? This feminization that's going on in this end time, right? In this end time, I can't even really call it a society because society is social, right? I must call it a dis-society. It's a dis-society, like a dysfunctional society, where the puss don't know it's a puss and the dog don't know it's a dog no more. So you see the dog is meowing and the pussycat, the puss is barking, right? How did this happen? This is against the hand of the Creator. This is against nature, right? And it's against the will of the Almighty. So where did this start? Where did this begin? And also the key is, how will it end? This is a very interesting pic right here, right? Once again, to show you this right here. Forget the guy that does a lot of these arts, so we just want to feature a little bit of that right there, right? And then also this one right here, right? This one right here, right? Male and female. The target of the attack, right? The target of the attack is the male. Why? Because the male was made in the image and after the likeness of the Almighty to be, right, God's representative, right, on the earth, to be really earth's rightful ruler. Now, when we're speaking of the male, to put it in a little more clearer context, since we're speaking about the beginning, we're speaking about the black male. This is why the prophecies are so clearly demonstrated for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear when they look at the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So-called blacks, Hispanics, and certain Native American tribes over here, especially in this Western hemisphere, those of so-called Negro descent. It is so obvious, right? It is so obvious, my brothers and sisters. I want to point out this book I pointed out before, right? The Gedla Adam, right? Or the book of Adam and Eve, right? The ancient book of Adam and Eve that was preserved in the Ethiopic, right? This is ancient knowledge, and it fills in, it fills in much of what the ancients knew. Like in Moses' time, right? Much of what's in the Gedla Adam was already known by those who were in the know, right? What Moses basically did was summarize this ancient knowledge. But in Egypt was that mystery hidden. This is a whole other aspect of it. Right. And it's so interesting when you can properly read the so-called, Kemetic, right? And you understand what the Hebrew, what Moses was learned in, that truth that was amongst all the garbage, because there was a lot of garbage, right? As we see even now in a lot of so-called Egyptology, there's a lot of garbage, but there is some precious truth that was preserved there that the Hebrews, right, became the custodian of. This is why you say, I've called my son out of Egypt, right? Even in the sight of the Egyptians, fulfilling the so-called prophetic of their own religion or what they believed in many different denominations. Basically, Egypt is like Christianity's today, right? In fact, the modern Christians are the real spiritual Egyptians, right? Of the end time exodus from the city that spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. But the target, right? The target of Satan's attack is the black male. And see, we've been saying this, and not just saying this. I'm getting really like, let me just breathe, take a breath. You know, because these are passionate points, right? Because we're in the passion of Yeshua, so we have compassion, right? In this point, we're in his passion about it. Right? To say to the people, listen, you know, this is truth. Right? When we talk about Adam and Eve, we're not talking about no Anglo-European Gentile fairy tale from people who thought that the earth was flat. Right? I mean, God bless those who, you know, did their best. Right? You know, and King James, our black king, right? This is one reason for the Bible and the scriptures, and all Europeans know this, whether they are Christians or not, that it was that knowledge, it was that book. You know, some people say, is it the Bible or it's the teachings of Kemet that is best for black people, right? The interesting thing about that particular question or that particular proposition, it's very general, right, is that both actually go hand in hand, but it's the Hebrew that has the right way. The righteous way. You really got to understand that. You really got to understand that. You can't approach Kemet, right, from a Western Gentile mentality. And unfortunately, because we've been so polluted in our heads and hearts for 400 plus years as the lost sheeple, you know what I'm saying? We too have to go through a transformation of our minds, right? To come out of this conformity, right? With like the Charleston Heston and Moses movie, even though he did some other stuff that really talked about the importance of certain things that black people did and acknowledging that. But that's a whole other matter right there. My point is that a lot of propaganda has been put out to pull the wool, right? Look at that, the wool over the sheep's eyes, so that the sheep become ashamed of the wool. I mean, look what's happened to the black woman today. Right? And see, ones don't recognize that if it happens to the black woman, there goes femininity. If it happens to the black male, there goes masculinity. And if it happens to the black male, female, and child, there goes humanity. This is a high level satanic attack. And it was already revealed, right, within the parable, if you want to call it a parable, but the parable doesn't make it any less true. You see this right there. It tells you male is a risk factor, right? The male is a risk factor, right? We didn't set this. This is what is already set in the system, right? What's already set in the system. And female is a literature subject, or it's a point of conversation, right? And you know, you can see that, you can hear that, you know, that's going on even while we talk, right? They're saying that now women need to get equal pay and all of these things. Well, you know what? We know that that's true, but that shows you that the failure of so-called feminism. Feminism is that literature subject, has been that talking point that has made a lot of feminists or feminazi insiders, right? This is 10 times, 100 times worse, right, than anything humanity has ever experienced. But see, people don't even see it. People don't get it just yet. right? You know, they don't get it. You know, he who feels it knows it. Unfortunately, by the time some get it, it might be too late. But, you know, hopefully a word to the wise should be sufficient. I just wanted to touch on this in this second portion on this subject matter. Because first I looked at it, I was like, oh, look at that. But then I said, you know how significant that is? Right? This is why I wanted to bring it to your attention. I wanted to document this, you know, because this is another exhibit, right? This is another exhibit, right? In a long line of exhibits that proves the basic premise and the basic argument, right? As well as it proves, right, the divine revelation of the scriptures, of the Bible, right? As well as it points attention to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to so-called black people and Negro people, especially in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? To wake up before it's too late. Anyway, my brothers and sisters, this is all a war against God. The war against the male is a out and out war against God, and the female or the woman, unfortunately, right? The woman, right? Of every nationality, of every race, right? But the key to the whole conspiracy, right, is the black man and the black woman, right? They are the target, the prime target of the attack, right? Using the black male, right, or using the black woman against the black male. And the black male's fault in the situation is just like Adam's fault. What was Adam's fault? Adam's fault was his pussy city, his passivity, right? He just ate. Remember, she turned to him. He was right there. He didn't say, Eve, what you doing? You know, why are you talking to the serpent? He didn't say nothing, right? And the first thing that Adam did, right? And this shows, I'll say Adam became a nigger at this point. What's the first thing Adam did? He blamed God, right? That's what Adam did. He blamed God, the Almighty, Elohim, right? And he blamed the woman. He said, the woman whom you gave, she gave me and I ate. What did the Almighty ask him? The Almighty said, did you eat of the tree that I commanded you not to eat? And he didn't say, yes, I'm sorry, Lord, forgive me. No, he said, the woman, right, that you gave me, right? So he's saying that gift of the woman, right, to be his disciple, right? That's what Hawa and Eve was supposed to be, right? And we can tell that he wasn't doing a proper discipleship. See, he was not deceived. The man was not deceived. He knew better. Just like a lot of y'all know better, right? Y'all know better, right? We know better, right? And if we know better, you know, to whom more is given, more is required. So because we know better instinctually, God speaks to us. We know the truth, man. We need to stop faking it. This is the last days of this time. If we're going to go into the true age of the kingdom, right, we have to repent, have a change of mind. We have to recognize the truth, right, and receive his grace. Anyway, my brothers and sisters, some more on this particular subject matter as we go forward. And once again, this is a war against God. The war against the male in principle is a war against God. The war against the black male and the black female in particular is the main target, right? The main focus and the main people, right, on the face of the earth is the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So-called black peoples, right, and Negro descendant peoples in the Americas and the Caribbean. They might be called Hispanic, or they might speak Spanish, might speak French, you understand? Might be native or considered native, you understand? We're speaking about the lost sheep of the house of Israel. How? Shalom. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Watch and pray, my brothers and sisters. right? And stay tuned. All right. Check out RasTafariGroundation.com and share this and even record your own vids or whatnot like that and document it as well. Make no, fellowship with the unfruitful, the unprofitable works of darkness, but rather expose. All right. Just as we sought to expose this right here, right? The male is the risk factor. All right. The female is just the feminist literature. Male risk factor versus feminist literature. The analytics for YouTube. I know the role and significance of YouTube. And this is not limited to YouTube. This is also Google. This means that it's like CIA Central. And it's linked with so many others. And everybody follows the so-called leader. All right. So, shalom.